What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Joey. I've been playing competitive card games at a high level for the past 10 years or so, and today we're going over a tabletop simulator online unofficial Riftbound tournament, and it's a pretty big one, so pretty cool data to go over, some deck lists to see. Let's get right on into it. Alright, so first and foremost, shouts out to Riftbound Meta. I will link his YouTube channel down below. He is the person that hosts these weekly tournaments, and this one got up to 92 players, which is pretty sick. I mean, that's a much bigger sample size, so the data that we take from this and make inferences about is going to be a bit more impactful, which is cool. Do keep in mind that this is still extremely early Riftbound testing. I mean, the game hasn't even released in China yet, so with that being said, people are still figuring things out. There's a lot to uncover, but it's going to be cool to see what decks are doing well this early on. So for top 3 representation, these are the decks that were most played in this event. At number 1, we have Victor. Number 2, we have Kaisa, which, spoiler, went on to win the event. So pretty cool and interesting that the second most represented deck actually ended up winning. And then we have Master Yi at 3rd, which I think Victor, Master Yi, super duper expected. These decks have been extremely popular. There's been a ton of hype around Master Yi. Victor has been a popular, like, fan favorite, quote unquote, busted deck since it's been revealed from the super early days. So yeah, this top 3 makes a lot of sense. Kaisa definitely a standout, and again, interesting the fact that it went on to win the tournament. We're gonna go ahead and take a look at that first place deck list in just a minute, but first let's list out our top 8. We do have first place Kaisa, second place Jinx, third place Ahri, fourth place Set, fifth place Victor, 6th and 7th a pair of Dariuses, and last place Annie. So super diverse top 8. Again, for an almost 100 player tournament, that's really cool to see. Not overly centralized by any one particular leader, which is cool. And even those 2 Darius lists, we're not going to look at both of them today, but they do have some significantly different build options. So with that being said, let's go ahead and just jump right on in to the first place Kaisa list. So on runes immediately, you see that it's a pretty decently hybrid build, 7 red, 5 blue. Our battlefield choices, Helllock, Voidgate, Reaver's Row, fairly generic ones. Voidgate obviously has insane synergy with Kaisa, increasing the damage of your damage spells. Going on to our main board, let's take a look through our units first. We have 3 Kaisa Survivor with no blue Kaisa in the main, so this is our chosen champion and one of our main options in general. I mean, the card is absolutely incredible. I am interested to see no blue Kaisa. I know it's definitely on the slower side. I mean, it's a heavy investment to play into your base tapped, and it's weak to a whole ton of removal. I know that's definitely the case, but still seems like a card you can get a lot of value off of, maybe in the right matchups. But then we have Ravenbloom Student as our 2-drop. Obviously, you're playing a super spell heavy deck, makes a lot of sense. And then for our draw power, Watchful Sentry and Lecturing Yordle. I think it's very cool to see Lecturing Yordle in more builds. I think this is a very interesting card. I mean, 3-2, not the best stats. The tank actually is significant sometimes. When you want to throw another unit into a battlefield and your opponent's unit that's fighting there doesn't quite have enough damage to actually get over this thing's tank and deal like maybe 4 to your Kaisa Survivor. So it is cool to like protect your key units that way. I think the card's really neat, and obviously the draw is invaluable. We do have 3 copies of Sprite Mother, 3 copies of Darius Trifarian, and the Thousand Tail Watcher. Just really solid unit lineup. I mean, the Sprite Mother giving you a pseudo haste on the token. Definitely good for answering battlefields. But of course, Kaisa is mainly going to be answering units in the form of its spells. So we'll come back to Cleave, I guess, for our main removal or like might weakening spells. We do have the 3 Stupefy. We have 3 Hextech Ray, which is really nice in Kaisa because it serves as early removal that doesn't actually have power cost thanks to the leader. We do have the Falling Star, this being a 2-1 with 1 power cost in Kaisa. Ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous card. Shakedown, personal favorite of mine. I'm very glad to see this in a first place list. I think this card is so good, and if 2 decks were going to play it, it's going to be like my Darius build, and it's going to be Kaisa because she negates that power cost, which is incredible. Smokescreen, another really cool card where like when this thing is just a 2 cost, essentially no power spell, you're going to get something -4. That's insane value. Now, you got to keep in mind when you're playing all these low cost spells that each have power cost, Kaisa can only pay for one of those per turn. So if you're going to string multiple low cost spells together in a turn, yes, there's going to be some power spent there, but it's still nice. Your leader basically gives you that 1 freebie every single turn. Void Seeker, again, incredible card. Interesting to note that there's no Immortal Phoenix in this build with all the removal that this deck offers. I'd definitely be curious to know why they thought Immortal Phoenix wasn't worth it in this list. That's something I would definitely be curious about. But now going on to 2 of our standout cards, 2 Orb of Regret and 2 Cleave. Cleave is a card that I'm not super high on. My kind of stance is like, why use Cleave when you can just use a removal spell to kill something outright, not even give them the opportunity to try to do some shenanigans mid-battle, because the way that battle works, at least when you're dealing with action spells, you play an action spell as the attacker, your opponent can't respond unless it's a reaction. Your action is going to fully resolve before they get the chance to do action. So in that circumstance, if you can kill something with an action spell, I think that's better than cleave. But I'm sure there's some units and some types of fields that cleave lets you beat over when you can't necessarily remove them via your removal spells. Like maybe if something gets too big and you really just need to throw a ton of might into that battlefield, maybe there is a use case for that. Orb of Regret, though, kind of acting like a pseudo Void Gate where you get more damage on your minus spells, which is pretty cool. Let's bump down to the sideboard. We did just recently get the official organized play rule set, which says you are going to be having an 8-card side deck. And I do appreciate here how it's just a clean 2-2-2. I've seen a lot of side decks go like 3-3-2 for certain cards, but I think this is a really great way to use a side deck to just kind of, you know, skew your deck in one way to maybe just do better in some matchups. Of course, there are going to be some decks that need a certain 3 of in the sideboard, but I just think the 2-2-2-2 is really, really clean. Let's see the choices, though. We do have the Icathian Rain, something that a lot of Kaisa decks have been bumping to the sideboard because most of the time, it takes your entire turn to cast this, right? And this is going to be really key against something like Victor, for example, maybe some other go-wide strats, maybe like a go-wide Darius or something like that, maybe even a Jinx. But the turn you cast this, I mean, for one, it's super costly on power, but for two, you're probably not casting a unit in the same turn you play this card because it is so costly. It's your highest cost spell in the deck. Also interesting, no singularity. Very, very interesting. But yeah, Icathian Rain, good in the right matchups, maybe just not needed in the main board, depending on the matchups you're going against. Like, you definitely wouldn't really want it against like an Aurora deck that just plays super tall and doesn't even really play early units, right? 2 Thermo Beam. Unfortunately, red and blue don't have the best answers to gear. This is one of them. It is nice that Kaisa covers one of the power costs that this would use, but yeah, it is what it is when you're trying to answer gear. 2 Vi, probably for some lower to the ground, kind of like anti-aggro possibly. When you're using spells and they're replacing themselves, you're building up your drop pretty easily, so you can get her up to decent powers of might. Not quite as high as Jinx probably, but still decent. And the Retreat, very cool how it protects your own units and then allows you to ramp a rune, so you have just more power cost to pay for. Very, very neat stuff. Congratulations to this player for taking down the tournament. Let's take a look at the second place Jinx list. We have mono red right off the bat. Very, very interesting. The battlefields make a ton of sense. I mean, Zon Warren's Arena's Greatest for sure. Reaver's Row, when you're playing this sort of like lower to the ground aggro deck and you want to preserve your units, they die pretty easily in battle, especially when they have Assault, so you want to be able to retreat them. Makes a ton of sense. For our main deck, our chosen champion, we do have Jinx Demolitionist with an extra copy in the main board. We have 3 Seals of Rage, which I think is pretty vital in a deck like Jinx, where you want to just like drop your hand as much as you can. A seal is a way to do that for 0 energy, but you're also playing a pretty power-hungry deck. Stacked deck. I mean, okay, let's talk in the comments below, guys. Should every single purple deck just be playing 3 copies of this, no questions asked? Because it costs 1, it's extremely cheap, it's the cheapest that a card can be in this game besides 0, and it gives you that much needed consistency in any purple deck you're playing. I mean, that's such a great effect for such a low cost. It's almost like Pot of Duality in Yu-Gi-Oh, right? Where you just get to really fix your hand. I don't know. I think this should be pretty much played in every single competitive purple deck for the most part. Hopefully you can fit it. But anyways, moving along to Cleave. Makes a bit more sense in Jinx, where you're actually trying to beat things by battle when you're playing an aggressive deck like this. We move along. Our unit lineup is pretty standard. Vi, Rearguard, Hopeful, Flame Chompers, Chemtech, Enforcer, Immortal Phoenix. I mean, this all makes sense. I love to see the Draven here. I think Draven is just the perfect red aggro top end, because you're taking 5 points by maybe turn 3. Draven's going to be a 5-drop 8, which is a huge rate. I like to just play him sometimes into battlefields that I control. Maybe I have a weenie in a battlefield, I play a Draven, all of a sudden my opponent can't even come into this battlefield because it's just way too much might for them to deal with. Incredible card. Very curious about the one of Brazen Buccaneer, though. I wonder if there's just like, hey, I need a 40th card, let me just throw this in there. Obviously, there's synergy with Flame Chompers, Immortal Phoenix, putting things in your trash. Maybe it is just a good one of like 4-drop play, if you think of it like that. Definitely curious to know why that was the 40th card, but I mean, seems decent. For our sideboard, acceptable losses. Each player kills a gear. This card's okay. There's definitely some times where this card is not going to feel great coming out of the sideboard, but again, it's purple and red's only option besides the 5-cost spell, so this being cheaper is probably just better, I guess. But anyways, when you're playing against an Aurora deck, especially the MF Aurora deck, they play 3 gear as part of their strategy, so they can really neglect you or prevent you from removing their Aurora, which is going to hurt a lot. Against other decks that maybe rely on one gear, or maybe even a deck that relies on seals, sniping their seal is cool. Obviously, you want to try to play this before you play your own gear, otherwise you don't want to give up your own gear. So this card, I think, is very hard to use, but, you know, this player got second place, so it must have worked out in some respect. We do have 3 Gust. Since we are playing mono red, we can't play Rebuke. Kind of sad, but still, Gust is a very, very good card. Getting a key thing out of a battlefield so you can go ahead and conquer is great. And then Sneaky Deckhand for when you want to be even more aggressive. Immediately jump to an open battlefield, get that point. Now you have control of it and can play units there. So very, very cool list. I think Jinx is the most flexible deck and leader when it comes to deck building. I think there's mono purple ways you can play, mono red, hybrid ways. I think Jinx is going to be one of those really cool ones to keep an eye on to see how people build it. I have a extremely different build of Jinx that I think is also really good. So yeah, it's going to be cool to see how people kind of mess around with Jinx going forward. Going on to third place, Ahri. Once again, rather hybrid build. Grove of Godwillow makes 100% sense. Arena's Greatest, interesting. I think that almost every deck that's not playing Aurora almost wants to consider itself an aggro deck or have the option to kind of go aggro. Because you don't want to really play that like longer mid-range game when you're up against an Aurora deck. So kind of makes sense that they would play Arena's Greatest here, when if Aurora didn't exist or if Aurora wasn't good in the format, I think that you wouldn't really see this leader play Arena's Greatest. But a cool include, probably a good meta call. And then Hollowed Tomb. When you hold here, you may return your chosen champion from your trash to your champion zone if empty. Ahri is a deck that can play this well. I mean, obviously it's good at holding, but also I don't know if this list is playing the 1-of green Ahri yet. We'll see in just a second. But if it is, this is a way to recycle it, which is kind of cool. Let's go through our units first. We do have the 1-of blue Ahri. So it looks like this is what we're recycling off of Hollowed Tomb, which is very interesting. We have the 3 Stalwart Poro, 3 Ravenbloom Student, just solid, perfect 2-drops. We have 3 Sunlit Guardian over 0 Wielder of Water. I want to shout this out because I'm actually on the same train right now, where I'm playing this card over Wielder of Water in any deck that's pretty much not Master Yi, because Master Yi, you specifically want to throw things into battlefields alone, where Wielder of Water gets the most value. You don't always want to do that in a deck like Lee Sin or Ahri. You want to throw Sunlit Guardian into a battlefield with your Stalwart Poro because it's more might, right? And yes, it is like 1 might weaker on offense, but it's the same exact might on defense. So you're never in this awkward scenario where like, oh, I have a Wielder of Water, I can't send it in with another unit because it's not going to get the full value. So I think this is a really cool decision. I'm on the same exact train. Really, really cool stuff. And the Clockwork Keeper. A card that I think is tough to play early because I don't know about wanting to use the draw 1 on turn 1 because of that green cost. But incredible card, like playing this later in a game to get the draw, to try to find like key spells. Very, very good, of course. Consult the Past, free, draw 2, incredible. Sprite Mother once again. I think this is becoming a little bit of a blue staple here. We saw it in the first place Kaisa list, now in the third place Ahri list. We have our 3 Blitzcrank and our 2 Riptide Rex. Incredible lineup of units, and Riptide Rex kind of serving as your biggest boss. We have our sideboard, 2 Rune Prison, great green card. I mean, if something's too big to beat over, just stun it. 3 Wind Wall, you need it in certain matchups, especially against those Grand Stratagem types of decks. And Adaptron, slightly better answer to gear, although it's more telegraphed than a spell would be or another gear card would be. So you got to play it though, because you just need those answers to gear. I honestly, like, I have this in the main board in my Ahri deck. I think you just kind of need it in this format, but incredible, incredible card for sure. Let's go ahead and take a look at our set build. Predominantly orange. We see Reckoner's Arena. It's going to be very interesting to see which specific cards this deck wants to reuse the hold effects of, that it's going to try to do that successfully with. Bile Maw's Lair. Units can't move here from base. I assume this is here to try to punish some other decks that try to retreat often, maybe like MF. Maybe like Yasuo, for instance. Very surprised that we don't see Navori Fighting Pits here, because I think that's one of the most consistent ways to actually get your buffs in set. But we'll see what the main deck looks like for how to actually generate buffs in just a second. And then Monastery of Hirana makes 100% sense. Sometimes you have an overabundance of buffs and you just want to draw a card, so makes total sense. Going into our main board here, I know a lot of people have not been big on orange set. I really, really like the card. I mean, the fact that it swings for 8, it clears out most battlefields that your opponent is holding. I think that's incredibly good. Obviously, there's a difference between like a go wide variant of set and a go tall variant. Like the go wide would probably more so use the yellow set, although I am seeing a lot of the go wide cards here anyway. So yeah, I think orange set is a little bit of a slept on card. I think it's really, really good. And it's the chosen champion for this deck. I don't think we see any yellow set here. Yep, scrolling down, we don't see that. So going through the rest of our units, Pit Rookie, Cythria, Poro, Glory Seeker, 100% staples, First Mate. We do see the one of Arena Bar. So this card is tough to use because playing this and not playing a unit feels kind of bad sometimes. But if you do find the one copy and you find a good opportunity to play it, having a permanent way to produce buffs is incredible. Call to Glory, one of the best spells in this deck because you can use it for 0 energy potentially. Kinku Monk, incredible for getting a double buff on play. And it looks like with Reckoner's Arena, we're trying to abuse Kiana. I love that strategy. Kiana is probably my favorite card in the game. Incredible, incredible stuff. And the 3 Fiora to really benefit off those buffs, because when she's mighty, which means when she has 5 or more might, she gains a whole slew of things: deflect, ganking, shield. Incredible, incredible stuff. For our sideboard, Salvage, one of the best answers to gear in the game. Simple 2 cost. Yes, it has a power, but it draws a card back and kills a gear of your choice. Incredible. Cannon Barrage, very interesting. Maybe this is specifically for Victor, because when they're in Trifarian War Camp, they're all +2, so Flurry of Blades doesn't necessarily work in that battlefield. Very interesting. And then Carnivorous Snapvine, one of the best cards in orange, just has a very, very steep 2 power cost. And then same thing on Harness Dragon, incredible card, kill anything on command, even in your opponent's base, but the 2 power cost, very costly. I'm sure those are just coming in for more like boss oriented matchups, maybe even for something like Aurora that's playing big units that you want to kill before they fight you in a battlefield. Taking a look at Victor, we have a perfectly hybrid build, 6 of each rune. We have Targon's Peak, we have Obelisk of Power, and Arena's Greatest. Very interesting setup of battlefields here. Again, Arena's Greatest, like, you want to be faster than any of the Aurora decks to get under them, and you spread tokens. I'm assuming this is going to be a token spam build. We'll see in just a second. Targon's Peak, I mean, blue and yellow have incredible spells that you want to use during your opponent's turn. Makes sense. Obelisk of Power, I do wonder, I guess maybe if you go second in this deck, you can specifically play your Victor leader from your champion area into your battlefield turn 1, or into your base rather. So that's probably the main reason that Obelisk is here, is like if you know you're going second in game 2, you want to go ahead and play this and get your leader out as early as possible, which makes a lot of sense. For units, we do have the one chosen champion Victor. We do have the Daring Poro. Love to see this guy. I love the artwork on this guy too. The fact that he's like basically being shot out of a cannonball, very cool. Trifarian Glory Seeker, we're dealing with buffs here. Cruel Patron, I love this card just because it's so overstated and the cost in Victor is so minuscule. I'm also a big believer of Commander Ledros. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that guy's name right, but the 4 power cost guy that reduces his power cost for every card you sacrifice upon his play. I think those are just really cool cards because they are overstated, like a 4/6 in this case, or a 6/8 in the other card's case. Kill a unit with Vengeance. This is usable more early than Harness Dragon at the cost of not also establishing you board presence, so definitely seems good for that. Sprite Mother, man, again, another blue deck, another set of Sprite Mother. This card must be insane. I'm going to definitely test more with it over the course of this weekend, given that it's showing up so much in the topping list of these decks. And then we do have the 3 Singularity. We haven't seen this in a blue deck yet up to this point. The 3 copies of Thousand Tail Watcher instead of the typical 2 we see in a lot of top ends. And for the sideboard, 3 Siphon Power. So this build seemingly doesn't fully revolve around token spam or like a super go wide strategy, but I'm sure this is coming in when you're bringing in like Noxian Drummer, for example, to generate more tokens. And one card we didn't see here was Vanguard Captain. So yeah, I guess we're not really leaning into the pure token spam. I guess we're just kind of leaning into like playing good blue and yellow cards, which is definitely not a bad way to go. And then again, the salvage for sniping those Auroras or any other problematic gear. For Darius, yes, we will go over the first place build. We have Darius. It looks like we also have a write-up from the owner of the deck, possibly, which is very, very cool. But we have 4 yellow runes, 8 red runes, our battlefields. Vile Maw's Lair, once again, maybe I was just super wrong on this card. I wonder like what specific matchup or what specific deck this is really being utilized for. It's definitely meant to punish some decks that want to retreat units often. I just wonder what specific matchup that is. Arena's Greatest for the aggro, Obelisk of Power. No specific note there, but actually Obelisk of Power going first can be really good because it means on your going first turn you have 3 runes, which you can use 2 of to play a 2-drop, and then your leader and your other remaining runes to play another 2-drop. So you get some really heavy tempo going first as Darius with this field spell. All right, so going into our main deck, we have Darius Trifarian as the chosen champ. No copies of yellow Darius here. We do see the Pouty Poro, a really cool card. I just don't think like Deflect on a 2 might guy is that relevant, but I guess just for being an early play, it's just solid. It seems like this plays an overabundance of 2-drops to really benefit off that Obelisk of Power play. The rear guard, the Poro, we have Dangerous Duo, a card that I wasn't also super high on. I mean, of course, this is Darius. You want to use Legion things. And I guess if you're buffing up a Pouty Poro by 2 and sending it in, your opponent's going to be a little less likely to use like the Void Seeker or whatever removal spell they might have on it because of the deflect. So that can be good. The 2 of Vayne, I think 2 is a perfect number because of its recurability. Once you see 1, that's generally all you need for most of the game. And 3 Kaisa Survivor. Are we seeing no seals in this deck? Very, very interesting to not see any seals here, just because it's a 0-cost way to activate your Legion. So I'm definitely curious as to why there are no seals here. Our spell lineup: 3 Cleave, 2 Hextech Ray, 2 Falling Star, 3 Hidden Blade, incredible card. 2 Void Seeker. I also play 2 Void Seeker in my build. I think it's great. I think that the 2 Vengeance on top of the 3 Noxian Guillotine is maybe a little bit overkill, but I do wonder like what specific matchups this might have been super pivotal for. Out of the sideboard, we have 3 Salvage, 3 Draven, which I'm surprised just isn't in the main board. I think it's just one of the best top ends you could play in this deck. And 2 Firestorm, very interesting. Deal 3 to all enemy units at a battlefield. I think this card is definitely decent in the right matchup. Probably good against Victor, where they're just loading up a ton of tokens into battlefields. So really cool stuff there. I love to see Darius. I think he's severely underrated, which is also what this player seems to think as well. So very cool. Congrats to this guy. And finally, let's take a look at our 8th place Annie list. Just able to squeak in there. Relatively hybrid build. We're playing Windswept Hillock, we're playing Voidgate, and we're playing Arena's Greatest. Even what you would think would be a control deck like Annie is playing Arena's Greatest to get underneath those Aurora decks. Super interesting how that's going to turn out with the meta. The 1 Annie Stubborn, I don't think we're playing any Annie Fiery. Makes a lot of sense. I don't think that card is so great for how much it costs. 3-stack deck. I'm a huge believer. Love to see that. Pretty standard spell lineup. Once again, the 3 Pouty Poro. I'm gonna have to go ahead and reconsider my stance on this card because it's seeming to do pretty well here. Top 8 twice in a almost 100 player tournament. Really good. We go down now. Some broken spells. Ride the Wind. Incredible card. The fact that it moves a unit and readies it, so like if you have a ganking method available to you, or you just want to like go take a point and retreat, I mean, this card is so flexible, so insane. You can score points in your opponent's turn with it as well. Incredible card. Shakedown, absolutely love it. If this is another deck that plays Shakedown, I'm going to be super interested in Annie going forward. Very cool. Love to see it. And then wrapping up, we have the Void Seekers, the Kaisas, and the Darius Trifarian, just some very strong red staples. And going into our sideboard, Morbid Return. Return a unit from your trash to your hand. I mean, there are tons of great units you'd want to pick back up. I wonder if this is like primarily for Annie Stubborn, since we only play the 1 copy. Being able to pick that back up and then pick up a key spell seems pretty good. But of course, if you got to pick up like your Darius Trifarian for some sort of Enter Ready or Haste, that can definitely be good. No Rebuke in the main. A little bit surprised because the card's just so insane. 1 Firestorm and then the 2 Tibbers here. These cards sort of serving very similar purposes, but Tibbers having a body costing 2 more definitely can be relevant sometimes. But there you have it, guys. That is your top 8 from this recent event. If you want me to cover more of these tournaments, definitely let me know in the comments below. Thank you once again to Riftbound Meta for hosting. Go check out his channel down in the description, and I'll see you guys in the next one.